Bass boat guys like really big decks, but the duck boat guys like their decks just a little bit smaller. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to frame a front deck in our duck boat project kit. Anything and everything you've ever wanted to know about decks, it's going to be in this video.
Hey guys, if you have time you'd like to listen to podcasts, check out ours. It's called The Drain Plug and it's on our TV Nation store and shop channel. I opted for them to call it The Boat Hole, but they voted against it. We also have a YouTube Shorts channel called TV Nation Shorts. You guessed it. And without further ado, we're going to hand it back off to Chris.
All right, so the first thing we got to do is plate this last little piece right here. And I've already cut a piece of our scrap 090 to fit it. And we're going to go ahead and rivet that in place. So up here we have a pretty uneven area. And what we like to do here at our shop is put this little edge trim piece on there. Now this is something that we sell separate on the website. It's just called an edge trim. It's not included in the kit, but if you want yours to kind of spruce up a little bit, gives it a nice little edge profile like that. And the way that it works is you got a longer piece up top and shorter right here, and that flat top piece will fit up there just like that. And then you'll put some rivets in right there, and it gives you a nice little rounded edge instead of having a square edge. That way you don't have to hit your knee on that. So go ahead and get that installed with a couple of rivets real quick. All right, so the next thing we need to do, extend our framing right here just a little bit. We're gonna do that by teeing somewhat angled aluminum. So cut a piece, and it's gonna fit just like this. Now we're probably gonna have to pull these rivets out. We shouldn't have done those. Good job. Probably have to drill a couple of these rivets out and reinstall them, but we'll have to put this piece inside there. And then once we get that installed, then we can come back in with another piece and tee it just like this. And that will give us a nice little flat area to attach our sheeting to when we get done, but it's also going to give us something to support from here all the way up to the front deck. We're also going to need to take out this rivet and this rivet. I know we had them just kind of holding things in place, but you can see right there, they're protruding down. So we'll pop those two rivets out and then put our angle up inside there. We'll drill through this top piece, through this angle, and into our new piece of angle down here at the bottom. Now we got the centerpiece in there. We're going to do the same thing over here on both sides. All right, so don't feel bad if you ever have to do this and you have to drill a rivet out. It's no big deal. We do it all the time. But now we got that piece secured in there. We got the middle, and we just need to do that side over there. All right, the next thing we're going to do is install this header piece, and it's going to tee off of the piece that we just did. Underneath, just like that, we're just going to take some standard rivets and put rivets in from this side to hold that in place. That's what's going to give us our header to run pieces from here all the way up to the front where the original deck is. Next thing we need to do is come up here on the top and put in a couple of rivets right here on the end, and that's going to tie in this new header piece to this piece that we put in on the side of the boat. With this header in, we're going to move on to putting another header in here. Now, if you have a traditional, like a tracker style boat, this is just going to be a nice flat rounded corner, and this will be easy to install. But on this old Fisher of a little notch right here that goes in, so we don't have a whole lot of room to put in rivets. So we got to be very careful that we make sure that we're riveting into this little piece right here. And it's only about 3/4 of an inch thick. So good luck. All right, now we just need to throw in a couple up here on top in each one of the corners. That'll secure this to the side piece. Next, we're going to be running a center support all the way across the boat right here. We're going to try to line it up as best we can with that rib. And we're going to do that with two pieces of angle put together to make a T all the way across. Now, the only thing we have to keep in mind is we need to put some vertical support from here up to where that cross beam is going to be. So we've made our own little brackets. We've got some angle that we've cut down to size. And right here, this is a hollow spot where the bottom rib of the boat is. So we're going to attach this with some rivets right in here. Once we've got a couple of rivets holding it in place, we'll take a piece of tube, and the tube is going to be our vertical support, and figure out where we want to put those two little brackets. We've made one for each side. Just make sure you don't drill through the bottom of the boat. That would be bad. And then we'll do the same thing over on this side. Now, to cut your 1¼ inch tube for your vertical support to the correct height, all you need to do is just take your header piece, go ahead and cut it to length, and on ours it was about 37 inches, and you can just kind of clamp it in place. I got two young, nice helpers today, and we just come in here with our tube and put it in place, and we just keep cutting it down until we got it to the appropriate size. We want this to fit nice and tight. You don't want to have a bunch of space in between your upright support and this top beam that's going across right here. But that's how it's all going to go together. We're going to throw a couple of rivets in back here, and then on this side, once we put that other piece in, we'll put in a couple of rivets right here, and that'll tie all that together. All right, so if you want to, you can come in here and measure each side and make sure they're both equal. We're going to do this by eye. I'm just going to use a couple of spring clamps. We'll hold one over here. You move it that way just a little bit. A little bit more. A little bit more. Oh, that's way too much. Go back that way. Oh, that's too much. Go back this way. Back this way. Oh, that's too much. Go back this way. I'm just kidding with you. Haha. Then we're just going to throw a couple of rivets in on each side. Next thing we need to do is come in here to where we teed this together and put in some standard rivets right in here to help hold these. All right, next we're going to put a center support all the way down, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make those two pieces of angle into a T, and they're going to go right down the center just like this. Now this is going to have to go on top because all of these pieces went underneath our framing over here. So everything running down this side of the boat is on top. Everything running this way down the boat is underneath the framing. So in order to make this work, we're going to have to notch out this little piece right here. We're going to have to notch over here, and we're going to have to notch over here, and that will lay that across the top of all three of these pieces of angle framing. We're going to go ahead and mark where we need to cut out for our notches. Another way you can do it by cutting little slots in it, and then you just kind of work this back and forth like that. All right, we got those pieces notched out. Now they're just going to slide in right over our framing, and we can go ahead and put some rivets in it. Now, you can do this again, measuring if you want to, but we do everything by eye, and that is super crooked, dude. Super crooked. Way more crooked. Still crooked. Oh my, what are you doing? That's okay-ish. Go ahead. All right, now we're just going to come in here and do the same thing that we've done on the others and put a few rivets in each one of these to hold the two pieces that form the T together. All right, we cut two more supports out of angle and notched them to fit the same exact way we did that one. We're just going to put one on each side right here. We'll probably line them up where those ribs are that run down the length of the boat. That gives us about an equal amount of space on each side. And we cut two. One's going over here, and I'll line that up by eye. So to sheet our front deck, we're going to be using two pieces of 090. And if you were to buy the kit with all the sheeting, this is what you're going to get, a 16-inch wide by 60-inch long piece. Now, there's a ton of different ways that you can do this. You can make templates. There's little measuring devices that you can buy. We're going to show you the eyeball method. That's what we're going to do. We're going to line this back edge up with the edge of that trim piece back here. And I'm going to put one corner right up here, up next to the gunnel. Then I'm just going to take a Sharpie, and I'm going to trace the underside of this gunnel all the way to the back. And all the way back forward again. And he's going to do the same thing over on that side. All right, we'll flip that over. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a measurement of the outside edge of the boat all the way to this edge, 41 3/4. Marks that we made are probably going to be just a little bit off. And if I look at it right now, I'm at 42. So all I need to do is come in 1/4 of an inch on one side or the other, retrace that line, and we'll be good. And I'm just going to cut this with our skill saw. And we'll give that a quick test fit and see how we did. All right, so we got a pretty close fit. If you don't get it exact all the way down these sides, it's no big deal. There's a bunch of different ways you can fill that in. We're going to be bedlinering this when we get done. You're never even going to see that by the time we put the turf on this boat. So I'm not concerned about this being absolutely perfect along the edges. If you want to make templates and make it absolutely perfect, you can do that. It's not what we're doing today. So we got a couple of different variations in height back here that we've got to work around. So what we're going to do, come in here with a marker, and we got to make a few little cuts here. And all we're cutting around is just these little bitty pieces of framing right here where it's not in a nice straight line. So we're just going to notch those little pieces out with a jigsaw. Nothing crazy difficult about that. We're just going to put some lines on here so we know where our framing pieces are. With those lines, that will tell us where we need to put our rivets at to get into these framing pieces right here. Then we're going to do the exact same process for the front half.
Perfect.
Now we do have a little bit of a gap here between where this sheet ends and where our old front deck is, and I'm really not that concerned about it because we're going to fill all this before we paint the inside, or we're actually going to be using bed liner. But this is all going to be covered by a custom turf job, so you're never going to see this once we get done. So I'm not really concerned about the way that looks. It's about the same level. It's just a little bit off, probably less than a 1/16. So that will work just fine. And same thing up here. We're going to transfer our marks all the way up to this front part of the deck so we know where our framing pieces are, and we can put rivets in without missing any spots. Now to sheet a section like this where you've got an odd curve, one easy way to do it is just to find a square edge. So like the edge of this lid is pretty square, and I'm just going to pull this piece as close up as I can get it. Then what you need to do is find something that you can hold a pin up next to that's about the same distance away from the edge of the boat. And for this, I'm going to be using a piece of 1¼ tube that's just scrap left over from our kit. I'm just going to try to hold it level against the side of the boat. And we're going to run down the side just like this and trace that curve that I need. Once we have that cut and we make sure that it fits up against the side here and then it's square up against this lid, then we can trace the underside of this vertical wall, and that'll give us a nice straight cut, and we'll have this first piece ready to put in. I'm going to give that a quick test fit and see how we did. That is just about as close as I can get it. So now I'll just hold that up against the side and then come underneath here with my Sharpie. Just give this a good mark all the way back. Just check and make sure I got it, and we'll go cut that out. Because this is one of our scrap pieces that we cut off of a piece of the front deck, I want to square this edge up because I'm going to have to cut another piece to go here, and I don't want to try to have to match any weird angles. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my square on here, mark me a straight line, and we'll go give that a quick cut. And there we go. That looks pretty good. But it doesn't have a piece of framing here for this piece of 90 to attach to our framing here. So what I did is I made a couple of marks here on our framing where this 090 ends, and I've made me a small T with just some scrap pieces of angle, and I've threw a couple of standard rivets in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide this in right here and throw in a few rivets on each side. And with that in place, we can give it one more test fit. Looks like we got a perfect spot right there to put some rivets, and I just need to come in here and mark where my other one is. Looks like it's about right here. Exact same procedure as last time. I'm going to take that marker and put it on my piece of tube and use that to give me a rough trace of the outline that I need. And we'll do another test fit, see how we're looking. And that is pretty good. . 'Cause It looks like we're just a little long over here, so just put me a mark on each end and then we can trim that little bit off. And do not forget to come in here and mark where your cross braces are. That way you know where to put your rivets in and you're not drilling extra holes for no reason. Now, when you're building aluminum boats like this, you're going to run into height variation issues. And this one right here, I can already see that some people will probably not understand exactly what I did. So I've got this piece as flat, and I want to keep this piece as flat up next to it as possible because this is where our turf is going to be. And if I move this piece back, you can see this is our framing that came in from our gun box, and it goes up on top of this framing piece right here. And this 1/16 inch angle is level, the same exact height as this. So what I did was notch around this. And when we rivet this, this will all pull down flush and it will be pretty much all the same height. Now when we come back in with this piece and put it on top, you'll notice now it's not going to be flush anymore. This is going to be just a little bit higher than that. And in some cases, there's just no way to avoid it. But I would rather have this height variation be right here on an edge, because what's going to happen is the turf is going to come around here. It's going to hop up over this edge and come down this side right here. So in all reality, that's going to be covered, and there will be a slight hump in the turf, but nobody's ever really going to notice that. That is all just part of building these aluminum boats with angle. If you were to weld all this in, you could probably get it all nice and flat. But if you're going to do the rivet and angle method, sometimes this is just something that you run into. Just be aware of it and try to plan for it as best you can, and keep it in places where you know that turf or your carpet is going to cover it so you won't really ever see it. Well, now you should be an expert on decks of all sizes, whether that be little decks, big decks. You should know everything there is to know about decks, aluminum decks, putting them in John boat. Now, if you're completed with your build and you're ready to install your deck, you can go ahead and drill all your holes, put your countersink rivets in here, and there'll be countersink rivets in this duck boat kit that'll cover this whole entire deck area, the top of the gun box, and all of the sidewalls, which we'll be doing in the next video. But here's a handy tip for you that I've learned over the years of building these boats. Attaching the front deck and any top pieces like on top of this gun box over here are the very last thing that I do before I put turf on. And the reason being is it is a lot easier to get in here and run wiring for lights, hook up your batteries, put in your on-off switches, and all of that electrical stuff. You can do all of that with the decking and the top of like a gun box over here. You can do all that with it off, and it's a lot easier to access. So it's a pretty simple process. It's not overly difficult. We did most all of this by eye. If you're not comfortable doing it by eye, that's totally okay. You can get some cardboard, make you a template. I've seen people use construction paper. Whatever you feel comfortable with, go with your method. I'm just showing you the way that we do it here in the shop, and I know I've been doing it for a while. Just don't lose any sleep over gaps in the edges around the deck. All that's going to be covered, and we're also going to be putting in some sealant around the edge of this deck, and that's going to help hide any of those gaps. But you got to remember, like, if you're going to be putting carpet or turf on this, you're never going to see the edges because the carpet's going to wrap around the edges and it's going to fill any gaps that you have. But if you're putting turf on, all you got to do is remember to cut along the edge of the boat and not along the edge of the deck when you go to install your turf pieces, which we'll show you when we do the turf portion of this duck boat project. If you're not following along with the duck boat project, we've got a complete playlist on every single step we have taken to get this boat to this point. I'll leave a link to it down below and maybe up here in one of these little areas where you can click on it and go back and watch all of the videos on this project series. Up next, we're going to be putting in all of our vertical walls, finish up our framing back here for that little notch we're going to do to make it look like a Havoc or an Excel, one of those cool mud boats like that. We're going to cut out where our switch panel is going to go over here. We'll get the sheeting into our gun tray, and then we'll be ready to reveal the paint job for this thing. All that and more coming up.